I watched a human end a war without firing a shot. Not through diplomacy. Not through surrender. Through something far more dangerous than firepower. Something we'd mistaken for weakness until it was too late. The Terran they sent us didn't speak our language. Didn't try. For 37 cycles, she sat in silence while our empire tore itself apart trying to understand what she wasn't saying. We built entire intelligence apparatus around her refusal to communicate. We invented threats where none existed. We shattered our own cohesion, chasing the meaning behind her silence. By the time we realized the truth, we'd already lost. This is how that silence killed us. The human arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays I always spill my keffa, this bitter slush we drink that tastes like regret, and battery acid had a child. And that particular Tuesday, I'd managed not to. Small victory. Meaningless now. But at the time it felt like the universe owed me something good for once. And instead it sent me her. Her. The human. She came off the prisoner exchange shuttle in standard issue gray. No restraints. No guards flanking her with shock prods. Nothing. Just walked down the ramp like she was arriving for a job interview at a data sorting facility. Didn't look around. Didn't scan for exits. Didn't do that thing prey species do when they're calculating bolt paths and cover angles. She just stood there. Waited. My manipulator claws started that clicking thing they do when I'm nervous. Click, click, click against my slate. Drove my supervisor crazy, that habit. Drove me crazy too, but I couldn't stop. 43 years of intelligence analysis, and I still clicked like some baseline grade recruit who'd never seen combat footage. Designation? I said. Standard processing question. We had our files already, 3 different dossiers compiled from intercepts, battlefield captures, defector testimony, but protocol demanded we ask. She looked at me. Didn't answer. Designation. I repeated. Name. Rank. Operational theater. You know the drill. Nothing. Her eyes were brown. Dark brown, like the wood resin my broodmate used to collect before the war. Human eyes don't track the same way ours do. Ours flick, sample, process in rapid, overlapping fields. Hers just locked. Held. Like she'd selected one data point and decided nothing else mattered. Protocol requires verbal confirmation of identity, I said. Slower. Sometimes the translators lagged. Sometimes species have processing delays. If you don't comply, we move to coercive measures. She blinked. That's it. One blink. I clicked my claws faster. 6 times. My supervisor, Kelthir, pompous bastard with decorations he'd bought through family connections, leaned into my peripheral. Is there a problem, Torvash? She's non-responsive. Then, make her responsive. He said like I was an idiot. Like I'd forgotten how to do my job. Like 43 years of extracting information from hostile assets had somehow evaporated from my memory because I'd spilled keffa that morning. I pulled up her file. Scrolled through. Terran Defense Coalition. Special Operations. No rank listed. Which was strange, because humans love their hierarchies, their chains of command, their little brass markers if we gotta tell who what to do. Every other human prisoner we'd processed had a rank. Wore it like armor. She had nothing. Your file says you operated in the Crithian corridor, I said, trying a different angle. Sometimes appealing to shared experience worked. Sometimes prisoners wanted to talk about the fights they'd won, the kills they'd made. Humans especially. They loved their war stories. Nasty theater. Lost a lot of good soldiers there. She didn't react. 7 confirmed kills attributed to you. Maybe more. The reports were unclear. Your people are very good at obscuring individual operational data. I tapped my slate. But 7 we know for certain. 7 of mine. You remember any of them? Her expression didn't change. It wasn't defiance. I'd seen defiance. Defiance has posture. Defiance has energy, has a particular muscle tension around the jaw analogs, has that vibration of held-back violence. This wasn't that. This was absence. Like she'd removed herself from the room while leaving her body behind. Kelthir made a noise. Half hiss, half grunt. This is wasting time. Send her to conditioning. We use the other methods. She's flagged for intelligence extraction, I said. Command wants her intact. She's already intact. She'll still be intact after we motivate her. Motivate. I click my claws. 4 times. Faster rhythm. You mean torture? I mean standard interrogation escalation. Kelthier's head crest flushed orange. Anger color. You're too soft, Torvash. That's always been your problem. You talk to them like they're colleagues instead of enemies. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was too soft. But I'd seen what happened when we used the other methods. Seen the prisoners who came out of conditioning broken in ways that made them useless. Seen the ones who told us everything we wanted to hear, except it was all lies because they'd say anything to make it stop. Seen the ones who just died because their biology couldn't handle the stress and we hadn't calibrated the machines correctly. Waste. All of it waste. Give me 3 cycles, I said. If she doesn't talk, you can have her. Kelthier stared at me, calculating, weighing his authority against his laziness. Laziness won. It usually did. 3 cycles. Then she's mine. I put her in a standard cell. Mid-tier. Not the luxury boxes we saved for high-value defectors. Not the punishment holes for the ones who needed breaking. Just a room. Bed. Waste facility. One-way observation glass. Temperature controls set to human comfortable. She sat on the bed. Didn't test the door. Didn't examine the walls for weaknesses. Didn't perform any of the standard reconnaissance behaviors we'd documented in hundreds of hours of human prisoner footage. Just sat. I watched her through the glass for 2 hours. She didn't move. Didn't fidget. Didn't pace. Didn't talk to herself like some prisoners did, building conversation out of loneliness or fear or habit. She sat, and I clicked my claws against the observation deck railing until the security officer, young kid, barely 2 years out training, asked if I was okay. Fine, I said. Liar. I wasn't fine. I've been doing this job for 4 decades, and I'd never seen anything like her. Prisoners had patterns. Fear patterns, aggression patterns, dissociation patterns, calculation patterns. You learn to read them. Learn to predict the breaking points, the leverage moments, the psychological pressure zones. She had no pattern. She was a blank. First cycle, I tried conversation. Brought her food. Human-compatible rations. We'd gotten good at those after the first few years of the war, when we kept accidentally poisoning prisoners with incompatible proteins. Set the tray in front of her. Sat across the table in the interrogation room. We dressed up to look less threatening. Soft lighting. Rounded furniture. No visible restraint points. You should eat, I said. She looked at the food. Didn't touch it. It's safe. We have human dietary consultants on staff now. No toxins. No alergens. No sedativos. I paused. Well, not in this batch anyway. Nothing. Not even a flinch at the sedative joke. I ate some myself. Took a bite of the protein bar. Tasted like recycled leather and shame, but I swallowed it down. See? Safe. She blinked. That same slow blink. Like she was a piece of surveillance equipment cycling through a capture sequence. My name is Torvash, I said. I'm assigned to your case file. That means I'm responsible for determining your intelligence value and processing your eventual exchange or retention. I clicked my claws. 3 times. I prefer exchange. I don't like keeping prisoners long-term. It's expensive. It's complicated. It creates documentation problems. Her eyes tracked to my claws. To the clicking. First sign of external awareness I'd seen. Nervous habit, I said. Had it since I was a juvenile. Drives everyone crazy. Drove my brood mate crazy. Drove my supervisor crazy. Probably driving you crazy too, except you won't tell me because you're committed to this silence thing. She looked back at my face. Held eye contact. And I felt it then, this weird inverted pressure. Like her silence was a physical thing. Like it had weight and density, and it was pressing against my question, refusing to let it through. I clicked faster. Okay, I said. Okay, you don't want to talk. That's fine. That's your right as a prisoner under the Vixer Convention. But here's the problem. My supervisor doesn't care about your rights. In 2 more cycles, he gets to do whatever he wants to you. And he wants to hurt you. Badly. Because you killed 7 of his command. Because you're human and he hates humans. Because he's a sadistic piece of shit who gets off on pain. Nothing. So help me out here. Give me something. Anything. Your name. Your rank. Your favorite color. Just prove you can talk, and I could buy you more time. She stood, walked to the door, waited. I stared at her back, at the way she held herself. Not tense, not loose, just neutral. Perfectly neutral. Like her body was a piece of equipment she'd set to standby mode. Fine, I said. I opened the door. She walked back to her cell. Second cycle. I tried leverage. Brought in her personal effects. The things she'd had on her when she was captured. Standard tactical gear, stripped of weapons and electronics, but still hers. Sometimes prisoners responded to familiar objects. Sometimes it triggered nostalgia, homesickness, emotional vulnerability. I laid them out on the table. A knife sheath. Empty. A broken comm unit. Screen cracked. A small metal disc with markings I didn't recognize. A photograph. I picked up the photograph. 2 humans. Her and someone else. Younger. Same face structure. Sibling maybe. They were smiling. Humans smiled a lot in photographs. Some kind of cultural signaling behavior we'd never fully mapped. Who's this? I said. She looked at the photograph. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Microscopically. A slight tightening in her shoulders. A fractional change in her breathing rhythm. There. That was leverage. Family. I pressed. Friend? No. We have databases. We can find out. We can locate them. We can. She moved. Fast. Faster than I expected. Took the photograph out of my hand. Not violently. Not aggressively. Just reached over and removed it. Held it against her chest. Then sat back down. Same neutral expression. Same absence. But she kept the photograph. I clicked my claws. 7 times. New rhythm. Faster. I'm trying to help you. I said. I know you don't believe that. I know you think I'm just another enemy trying to extract information. But I'm genuinely trying to keep you alive and intact. Because in 2 cycles, my supervisor is going to strap you to a table and hurt you in ways I can't prevent unless you give me cause to extend your processing window. She looked at me, through me, and I realized she didn't care. Whatever calculus she was running, whatever decision matrix she'd built in her head, her own pain didn't factor. Her own survival didn't register as a priority variable. That should have been a relief. Prisoners who didn't care about themselves were easier to work with. No leverage points. No emotional buttons to push. Just empty vessels waiting to be filled with whatever narrative we wanted. But it wasn't a relief. It was terrifying. Because if she didn't care about herself, what did she care about? And what would happen when we figured it out? Third cycle, I tried honesty. No tricks. No leverage. No manipulation. Just sat across from her and told her the truth. I'm going to lose my job after this, I said. Kelther's been waiting for me to fail. 43 years I've been doing this, and I've never failed. Never lost a prisoner to conditioning without getting something valuable first. Never let a high-value asset slip through to execution without extracting actionable intelligence. I have a perfect record. She sat. Listening? Maybe. Hard to tell. You're going to break that record, I continued. And I'm angry about it. Angry at you. Angry at myself. Angry at this whole stupid war that keeps feeding me prisoners I can't crack. I clicked my claws. 11 times. Arrhythmic. I'm good at my job. I'm really good at it. But you're something else. You're a category I don't have training for. Her eyes tracked to my claws again. To the clicking. It gets worse when I'm stressed, I said. The clicking. Neurological feedback loop. The more anxious I get, the more I click. The more I click, the more anxious I get. Vicious cycle. I stopped. Forced my claws still. But you don't care about that. She blinked. One slow blink. And then she did something I didn't expect. She raised her hand. Made a gesture. Slow. Deliberate. She clicked her fingers together. Once. Twice. 3 times. Mimicking my rhythm. I stared. Are you? I stopped. Started again. Are you mocking me? She lowered her hand. Resumed her neutral posture. But, I swear, I fucking swear, I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Not a smile. Not quite. But something. Kelther came for her at the end of the third cycle. Brought 2 guards. Big ones. Combat grade. They flanked her cell door like they expected her to fight. She didn't. Just stood when they opened the door. Walked between them without resistance. Kelther looked at me. Smug. Victorious. No results, Torvash. No results, I said. Pity. I had high hopes for your legendary skills. He ran a manipulator along her shoulder. She didn't flinch. Didn't react. We'll see what she says after a few hours in the deep conditioning suite. Humans break easily once you find the right nerve clusters. He led her away. I stood there. Clicked my claws. 13 times. Fussed. And I knew. I absolutely knew. I just made a catastrophic mistake. I just didn't know what kind yet. The conditioning suite had cameras. I shouldn't have accessed them. Wasn't my jurisdiction anymore. Wasn't my case. But I did it anyway because I'm an idiot who can't let things go. They strapped her to the table. Standard configuration. Restraints at wrists, ankles, neck, waist. Sensor arrays positioned for maximum neural access. Stimulation nodes calibrated to human pain receptors. Kelther stood over her with a tools tray. Last chance to talk, he said. Tell me your designation. Tell me your unit. Tell me your operational parameters. Give me anything, and I'll make this easier. She looked at him. Same blank expression. Same absence. He activated the first node. I won't describe what happened next. Not because it's classified. Not because it's too horrific, though it was. But because describing it would give it meaning, and the whole point of what they did to her was to strip meaning away. To reduce her to pure reaction. Pure stimulus response. Pure animal. She screamed. Humans scream differently than we do. Higher pitch. More resonance. Something about their vocal cord structure. It's designed to carry over distance, to alert pack members to danger. No pack members came. Just more pain. And through it all, through the screaming, through the convulsions, through the neurological cascade that should have shattered her cognitive integrity, she didn't talk. Didn't beg. Didn't negotiate. Didn't offer information. She just screamed. And when she couldn't scream anymore, she went silent again. Kelther ran the conditioning cycle for 6 hours. Standard protocol was 90 minutes maximum. He ran it for 6. When he finally stopped, she was unconscious. Vital signs critical. Neural activity erratic. The medical officer had to intervene to prevent permanent damage. They took her back to her cell. I watched the footage 7 times. Trying to understand. Trying to find the moment where she broke, where the information started to leak, where her conditioning failed and her training gave way. There was no moment. She'd endured 6 hours of the worst pain we could inflict. And she told us nothing. She woke up 3 cycles later. I wasn't supposed to see her. Kelther had filed obstruction complaints. Command had reassigned me to database archival. Busy work for analysts who'd outlived their usefulness. But I still had access to the observation feeds. I still watched. She sat up on her bed. Slowly. Every movement careful. Measured. Like her body was a machine she was testing after repairs. Then, she looked directly at the camera. At me. And she smiled. Not a big smile. Not triumphant. Not defiant. Just a small upturn at the corners of her mouth. Like she'd won something. Like she'd proven something. And I realized, sitting there in my shitty archive office with my cold keffa and my clicking claws, that we'd been asking the wrong question. We'd been trying to figure out what she knew. What intelligence she carried. What secrets she was protecting. But that wasn't the point. The point was the silence itself. The point was that she could endure anything we did to her and maintain that silence. The point was that we just proved to ourselves, to our intelligence apparatus, to our entire military structure, that there was at least one human who could not be broken. And if there was one, there were more. And if there were more, every interrogation protocol we had was worthless. Every assumption about human breaking points was wrong. Every strategic calculation based on extracting information from captured humans was compromised. She hadn't told us anything, but her silence had told us everything. Command pulled her file the next cycle, reclassified it, sealed it, restricted access to Senior Intelligence Council only. I tried to get into the briefings. pulled every favor, called in every connection. Nothing worked. But rumors spread. Always do. Word was they were panicking. High command. The strategic planning apparatus. The psychological warfare division. Word was they'd run probability models. Word was they discovered that 17% of human prisoners in our detention system had maintained operational silence past standard conditioning thresholds. 17%. That's not an anomaly. That's a pattern. That's training. That's doctrine. That's humans deliberately seeding our prison population with assets who were psychologically prepared to endure any level of interrogation without yielding information, which meant we couldn't trust anything we'd extracted from the other 83%, which meant every strategic advantage we thought we'd gained from human prisoners was potentially disinformation, which meant our entire intelligence picture of the enemy was compromised. All because one human sat in silence for 3 cycles. All because one human smiled at a camera after 6 hours of conditioning. All because we'd mistaken silence for weakness instead of recognizing it for what it was, a weapon we had no defense against. I saw her one more time. Prisoner exchange. Mass release. Part of some diplomatic negotiation I wasn't cleared to know the details of. She walked across the neutral zone in the same gray uniform she'd arrived in. Didn't look back. Didn't acknowledge any of us. Just walked to the human side and disappeared into their ranks. I stood there on our side of the line. Clicked my claws. 23 times. Fussed. Irregular. Kelthir stood next to me. Quiet for once. We should have killed her, he said. Maybe. Definitely. Wouldn't have mattered, I said. There are more like her. There have always been more like her. We just didn't know it. He didn't respond. What was there to say? We've been fighting humans for 7 years. Winning, we thought. Superior numbers. Superior technology. Superior strategic positioning. But we've been fighting them wrong. We've been treating them like any other species. Assuming they'd break like any other species. Assuming their cohesion would fracture under pressure like any other species. We were wrong. And now we knew it. And knowing it changed everything. I submitted my retirement request the next cycle. Approved immediately. No exit interview. No ceremony. No recognition for 4 decades of service. Just a data packet with my pension allocation and a polite note thanking me for my contributions. I took my things, my slate, my empty Keffa thermos, my collection of case files I kept because I'm sentimental and stupid, walked out of the intelligence complex. Never went back. That was 4 years ago. The war is still going. We're losing now. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just slowly. Incrementally. One strategic miscalculation at a time. Every battle plan compromised by uncertainty about what intelligence we can trust. Every interrogation haunted by the possibility that the prisoner is another one of hers. Another one trained to sit in silence while we tear ourselves apart trying to understand what they're not saying. We're not fighting humans anymore. We're fighting the idea of humans. Fighting the possibility that everything we think we know is wrong. Fighting the suspicion that they're better at this than we are. And we're losing. All because one human refused to talk. All because her silence was louder than any confession. All because we were too arrogant to recognize a weapon when it was sitting right in front of us, smiling at our cameras, clicking its fingers in mockery of our nervous habits. I still click my claws sometimes. Late at night. When I can't sleep. When I think about her. And I wonder if she's somewhere out there, sitting in silence, teaching other humans how to break us with nothing but absence. I wonder if she remembers me. If she knows she won. If she cares. Probably not. She never cared about anything we could understand. That was the whole point. The silence spread. Not like disease. Diseases have vectors, have predictable transmission patterns, have identifiable patient zeros. This was different. This was coordinated. This was deliberate. 3 months after she left, we started getting reports. Human prisoners across 17 detention facilities had stopped talking. Not all of them. That would have been obvious. That would have triggered immediate countermeasures. No, just enough. Just the right ones. The ones we'd flagged as high value. The ones we'd invested resources into. The ones whose information we'd built operational strategies around. They stopped talking, and we panicked. I watched it happen from retirement. From my little coastal dwelling where I'd planned to spend my remaining years not thinking about the war, not thinking about intelligence work, not thinking about her. Didn't work out that way. Kelther called me on the 6th week. "We need you back," he said. No preambid. No apology for the way he'd buried my career. Just need. No. Torvash, I'm retired. Find someone else. There is no one else. You're the only analyst who had direct contact with the primary subject. You're the only one who documented the behavioral patterns before we understood what we were seeing. I clicked my claws against my data slate. Habit, even in retirement. 16 times. Fast EHYTHM. What do you want from me? Consultation. Analysis. Pattern recognition. He paused. Kelther never paused. Pauses meant weakness, meant uncertainty, meant he needed something he didn't want to ask for. We're losing control of the intelligence pipeline. Every interrogation is compromised. Every piece of information is suspect. We need to understand what they're doing. They're not doing anything, I said. That's the point. Then help us understand how to make them do something. I should have said no. Should have ended the call and gone back to my coastal dwelling and my shitty kefa and my clicking claws and my quiet descent into irrelevance. But I didn't, because I'm an idiot, because I wanted to know, because she'd gotten into my head and I couldn't get her out. Send me the files, I said. They gave me an office. Small, corner placement, no windows, the kind of space they reserve for contractors they don't trust, but need anyway. I didn't care about the space. I care about the files. 247 cases. Human prisoners who'd maintained silence past acceptable interrogation thresholds. Scattered across our detention network like seeds in soil, waiting for the right conditions to sprout. I pulled the data, cross-referenced, built correlation matrices, found a pattern. It wasn't random. The silent prisoners had no common unit designation. No shared operational theater. No overlapping capture dates or locations. On paper, they had nothing connecting them. But dig deeper, past the surface data, past the obvious connections, and you found it. They'd all been captured during the same 3-month window. All of them. 247 prisoners. 17 facilities. Captured during a narrow temporal band when human forces were supposedly in retreat, supposedly disorganized, supposedly losing strategic cohesion. They weren't in retreat. They were seeding, deliberately getting captured, deliberately spreading themselves across our detention system, deliberately placing assets in positions where we'd invest resources trying to break them. And when they didn't break, when they maintained operational silence, we'd panic. We'd divert intelligence resources. We'd question every piece of information we'd extracted from other prisoners. We'd tie our entire analytical apparatus in knots trying to solve a problem that had no solution. Because you can't extract information from someone who refuses to provide it. And you can't know whether someone is genuinely broken or just pretending to be broken if you know some prisoners are trained to fake compliance. The uncertainty alone was enough. The uncertainty was the weapon. I compiled my findings. 300 pages of analysis, probability models, behavioral correlations, strategic implications. Sent it to Kelther with a single-line summary. We've been fighting the wrong war. He called me 6 hours later. This can't be right. It's right. You're saying they intentionally sacrificed 247 soldiers just to compromise our interrogation effectiveness? Yes. That's insane. That's strategically irrational. The intelligence value of 247 experienced operators outweighs any psychological advantage they'd gain from "you're thinking like us," I interrupted. You're calculating value based on our strategic framework. But humans don't optimize the same way. They don't think in terms of individual asset preservation. They think in terms of systemic disruption. Silence on the line. Not empty silence. Not our silence. Thinking silence. If this is true, Kelther said slowly, then we can't trust any information we've extracted from human prisoners. Ever. The entire intelligence foundation of our war strategy is compromised. Yes, we'd have to assume every cooperative prisoner is a plant. Every piece of tactical data is disinformation. Every strategic assessment based on interrogation results is wrong. Yes, that would mean he stopped. Start again. That would mean we've been losing for years and didn't know it. I clicked my claws. 22 times. Irregular pattern. Yes, I said. High Command rejected my analysis. Not surprising. Accepting it would have required admitting they'd been wrong about everything. Would have required a complete strategic reassessment. Would have required acknowledging that humans had outmaneuvered them using nothing but deliberate silence and our own paranoia. Pride kills slower than weapons, but it kills just as thoroughly. They rejected my analysis and implemented new interrogation protocols instead. Harsher methods, longer conditioning cycles, more invasive neural extraction techniques. The silent prisoners still didn't talk. And the ones who did talk, we couldn't trust them. The psychological division started seeing casualties, interrogators breaking down, analysts developing paranoid ideation, command staff experiencing decision paralysis, not from combat stress, from uncertainty, from the growing suspicion that everything they knew was wrong. I watched it cascade through the command structure like poison in a water system. Slow, invisible, inexorable. Month 4. Field commanders started refusing intelligence reports. I don't trust this data, Admiral TRYNX said during a strategic briefing I wasn't supposed to be monitoring. 3 weeks ago, we lost an entire strike group because the intelligence assessment said the sector was lightly defended. It wasn't. It was a kill box. Our interrogation data told us the humans had pulled their fleet assets to the Verdun front. They hadn't. They were waiting for us. The source was verified, the intelligence officer said. Multiple corroborating accounts. Standard confirmation protocols. I don't care about your protocols. I care that my soldiers are dying because your prisoners are lying to us and we can't tell the difference anymore. The intelligence officer had no response. What response was there? Month 6, fleet deployments started getting delayed. Not because of logistics problems. Not because of resource constraints. Because commanders couldn't agree on strategic priorities. Because every battle plan was built on intelligence assessments they couldn't trust. Because committing forces based on bad information meant losing those forces, and losing forces meant losing the war, and losing the war meant extinction. Better to do nothing than to do something wrong. The paralysis spread. Month 8, I got another call. Not Kelther this time. Senior command. Direct line. Analyst Tor Vash. Retired analyst Tor Vash. I corrected. Petty, but satisfying. We need you for a special assignment. Classified. Priority Alpha. We're assembling a task force to address the human silence protocol. You're the primary expert on the original subject. Your presence is requested at the Central Intelligence Complex immediately. Requested or required? Does it matter? I clicked my claws. 31 times. Fastest rhythm yet. I suppose not. The briefing room held 12 people. All senior analysts. All specialists in human psychology, strategy, warfare patterns. All looking various degrees of exhausted and desperate. I recognized a few. Dorinth, xenopsychology, brilliant but erratic. Vexel, strategic doctrine, conservative but thorough. Malara, counterintelligence, paranoid even by our standards. We sat around a conference table designed for important decisions. We've been making nothing but wrong decisions for months. Gentlemen, ladies, others. The briefing officer, some senior command type whose name I didn't catch and didn't care about, activated the holo display. We have a problem. Understatement of the war. Human silence protocols have effectively neutralized our interrogation advantage. We've tried escalating conditioning. We've tried pharmaceutical intervention. We've tried neural mapping and forced memory extraction. Nothing works on the silent ones. And the ones that do talk, we can't determine which are genuine and which are feeding us deliberate misinformation. The holo display shifted. Showed a map. Our territory in red. Human territory in blue. Contested zones in purple. The purple had been spreading. 3 months ago, we controlled 43% of contested strategic zones. Today, we control 29%. Not because humans are winning major engagements, but because we can't coordinate fleet movements effectively. Because our commanders don't trust the intelligence they're receiving. Because our strategic planning apparatus has ground to a halt under the weight of epistemic uncertainty. Epistemic uncertainty. Fancy words for we don't know what's true anymore. Your mission is to solve this problem, the briefing officer continued. Find a way to break the silence protocol. Find a way to verify information reliability. Find a way to restore our intelligence operational effectiveness. Malara laughed. Not funny laugh. Bitter laugh. The kind of laugh you make when someone asks you to solve an impossible problem and pretends it's reasonable. You're asking us to find a method to force humans to tell the truth, she said. A species that deliberately trained hundreds of soldiers to endure unlimited conditioning without breaking. A species that sacrificed those soldiers specifically to compromise our intelligence systems. A species that understands psychological warfare better than we do. That's why you're here, the briefing officer said. You're the best minds we have. The best minds we have couldn't prevent this situation, Malara said. What makes you think we can fix it? Silence. Not comfortable silence. Not productive silence. Defeat silence. I clicked my claws. 47 times. Lost count halfway through. Had to start over. We're asking the wrong question, I said. Everyone looked at me. We keep trying to break the silence. We keep trying to extract information. We keep trying to force humans to operate within our framework. I pulled up my data slate. Displayed the correlation analysis I'd built months ago. But that's not how they think. They don't see silence as a defensive measure. They see it as an offensive weapon. They turned our own interrogation apparatus against us. They made our strength into our weakness. So what do you suggest? The briefing officer said. Stop interrogating them. The room erupted. Objections. Protests. Accusations of defeatism. I waited. Eventually they ran out of words. If we stop interrogating human prisoners, I said, we eliminate the resource drain. We eliminate the psychological casualties. We eliminate the uncertainty. We accept that we won't get information from them, and we build our strategic framework on observable behavior instead of extracted intelligence. That's admitting defeat, Vexel said. No, that's admitting reality. We've already lost the interrogation war. Humans won it before we knew we were fighting it. Continuing to invest resources in a losing strategy is worse than adapting to new constraints. Dorinth leaned forward. You're saying we should just accept that we can't extract intelligence from captured humans? I'm saying we should accept that any intelligence we do extract is suspect, which means it has negative value. It's worse than useless. It's actively harmful because it gives us false confidence in bad information. This is going to make command very unhappy, the briefing officer said. I clicked my claws. 53 times. New record. Command has been unhappy for 8 months, I said. This is just making it official. They didn't implement my recommendation. Of course not. Too radical. Too defeatist. Too much like admitting humans had outplayed them. Instead, they tried new protocols, new techniques, new theories about how to crack the silence. None of it worked. Month 12, the first fleet mutinied. Not violently, not dramatically, just refused orders. Admiral Kesh, decorated, experienced, 40 years of loyal service, told High Command he wouldn't commit his forces to an operation based on interrogation intelligence. I've lost too many soldiers because your prisoners lied to us, he said. I'm not losing more. Give me verified intelligence, or I'm not moving. High Command relieved him of duty. His second-in-command refused to accept the promotion. So did the third, and the fourth. The entire command chain of the First Fleet refused to operate under existing intelligence protocols. High Command couldn't court-martial everyone, couldn't replace an entire fleet command structure, couldn't enforce orders that subordinate commanders had lost faith in. The mutiny spread. Not rebellion, not sedition, just refusal. Just a collective decision that following orders based on bad intelligence was worse than not following orders at all. Month 14. Kelthir killed himself. Found him in his office. Empty Kefa thermos next to him. Neural disruptor set to terminal frequency. No note. No explanation. Didn't need one. I'd seen it coming. Seen the way the stress had carved lines into his carapace. Seen the way his crest had lost its color. Seen the way he'd started clicking his claws, just like me, when he thought no one was watching. He'd spent 30 years building an intelligence apparatus. Humans had dismantled it in less than 2. That kind of professional failure breaks people. Especially people like Kelthir, who'd built their entire identity around competence, around control, around being the smartest person in the room. I went to his funeral. Small ceremony. Few attendants. No honors. Command didn't want to draw attention to intelligence division casualties. Bad for morale. Month 16, they call me back. Again. Different briefing room. Different officers. Same desperation. We've reconsidered your analysis, a new senior command officer said. Someone had replaced the old one. Didn't ask what happened to them. Didn't want to know. We're prepared to implement new protocols based on your recommendations. Which recommendations? Stop investing resources in human prisoner interrogation. Shift to behavioral observation and pattern analysis. Accept that we're operating with limited human intelligence and rebuild our strategic framework accordingly. I stared at them. That was 16 months ago, I said. You could have done this 16 months ago. We weren't ready. You mean you weren't desperate enough? No response. Truth didn't require acknowledgement. What do you need from me? I said, we need you to design the new framework. You understand human strategic thinking better than anyone else. You've studied the silence protocol extensively. You're the only analyst who had direct contact with the original subject. Her again. Always her. Haunting me across years and protocols and strategic collapses. I'll do it, I said. But I have conditions. Name them. Full access to all human prisoner files. Unrestricted research authority. And I want to talk to her again. The original subject was released in a prisoner exchange. She's back in human territory. We have no way to then get away. Negotiate. Trade. Whatever it takes. I want to talk to her. Why? I clicked my claws. 61 times. So fast it almost sounded like one continuous rattle. Because I want to know if she knows, I said. If she understands what she did. If any of this was intentional, or if it was just us destroying ourselves while she watched. The officer considered. Calculated. Weighed costs against benefits. I'll see what I can do. It took 4 months. 4 months of negotiation. 4 months of diplomatic back channels. 4 months of carefully worded proposals and counterproposals. The humans agreed to a meeting. Neutral ground. Third-party arbitration. Strict protocols. And one condition of their own. I had to come alone. The meeting room was small. Sparse. Table. 2 chairs. Observation equipment neither side acknowledged, but both knew was there. I waited. Clicked my claws. Lost count after 80. The door opened. She walked in. Same gray uniform. Same neutral expression. Same absence. She sat across from me. I stared. She'd changed. Not drastically. Not obviously. But something in her face had shifted. Like she'd been carrying weight and had finally set it down. You wanted to talk, she said. Her voice. I never heard her voice. 20 months. 20 interrogation sessions. 20 hours of trying to get her to speak. And now she just talked. Casual. Easy. Like there'd never been silence at all. You can talk, I said. Stupid. Obvious. But it was all I could manage. I could always talk. But you didn't. No. Why not? She leaned back. Crossed her arms. Because talking would have given you something. Even if I lied. Even if I fed you misinformation. The act of talking would have validated your interrogation framework. Would have reinforced the belief that you could extract value from prisoners. Would have kept your intelligence apparatus functional. So you stayed silent. So I stayed silent. I clicked my claws. 93 times. New record. You knew. I said. You knew what it would do. You knew we'd panic. You knew we'd tear ourselves apart trying to understand. You knew the silence would be worse than any lie you could tell. She smiled. Same small smile. Same upturn at the corners of her mouth. I didn't know, she said. I hoped. There's a difference. What's the difference? Hope is what you do when you're tied to a table and someone's hurting you and the only power you have left is refusing to give them what they want. She leaned forward. You wanted information. I wanted you to doubt every piece of information you had. Silence was the only weapon I could use. So I used it. You destroyed our intelligence apparatus. No, you destroyed your intelligence apparatus. I just showed you it was vulnerable. You did the rest. I wanted to argue, wanted to defend, wanted to explain that it wasn't that simple, that she deliberately exploited psychological weaknesses, that this was all part of some larger human strategy. But she was right. We'd done this to ourselves. All she'd done was sit in silence while we panicked. Was it worth it? I said. The conditioning, the pain, the 6 hours of neural extraction. Was it worth it to compromise our interrogation protocols? She didn't answer immediately. Thought about it. Really thought about it. Ask me that question in 10 years, she said finally. After the war's over. After we've counted the casualties. After we know whether my silence saved more lives than it cost. You think you saved lives? I think I kept your interrogators busy hurting me instead of hurting other prisoners. I think I created uncertainty that made your commanders hesitate before committing forces to bad intelligence. I think I bought my people time. She paused. Whether that was worth 6 hours of pain, I don't know yet. Maybe I never will. Honest answer. More honest than I expected. More honest than I deserved. Why did you agree to this meeting? I asked. Why talk to me now? Because you asked. Because I owed you that much. Oh me. You try to help me. You try to buy me time. You try to prevent what happened in that conditioning suite. She met my eyes. Direct. Unwavering. You failed. But you tried. That matters. I clicked my claws. Lost count. Started over. Gave up. I watched the footage, I said. 7 times. I watched you scream. I watched you convulse. I watched you endure 6 hours of conditioning that should have shattered your cognitive integrity. And you never broke. Never even came close. I came close. You didn't show it, because showing it would have been breaking. We sat in silence. Real silence this time. Not weaponized. Not strategic. Just two people who'd been on opposite sides of a war, trying to understand what they'd done to each other. We're losing, I said finally. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Just slowly. Because we can't trust our intelligence. Because our commanders can't make decisions. Because you and soldiers like you taught us that everything we think we know might be wrong. Good. Good. We're losing too, she said. Just slower. Because wars of attrition favor whoever can hold out longest. And humans are very good at holding out. Is that what you are? Holding out. That's what we've always been. She stood, extended her hand. Human gesture. Social protocol. I'd read about it, but never experienced it. I took her hand. Her grip was firm. Warm. Real. Thank you for trying to help me, she said. I didn't succeed. No, but you tried. In a war where most people don't, that's worth something. She left. I sat there for another hour, clicking my claws, 147 times, thinking about silence, about weapons you can't see, about how humans had beaten us without ever firing a shot in my direction. I designed a new framework, 300 pages of protocols, behavioral analysis, pattern recognition, strategic assessment based on observable actions rather than extracted intelligence. High Command implemented it. Too late. Always too late. The damage was done. The doubt had spread. The cohesion had fractured. We kept fighting, kept losing, kept trying to recover something that had been broken beyond repair. That was 2 years ago. The war's still going. We're still losing. Just slower now. More carefully. With full knowledge that we're losing. Sometimes I wonder if that's better. Knowing. Seeing the shape of defeat before it arrives. Sometimes I think ignorance would have been kinder. I saw her one more time after that meeting. Battlefield footage. Intercepted transmission. She was leading a squad. Human soldiers. They were pinned down. Outgunned. Outnumbered. Should have been a slaughter. But they didn't break. Didn't panic. Didn't surrender. Just held position. Returned fire. Waited for extraction that might never come. And I realized, watching that footage, that the silence protocol wasn't about interrogation at all. It was about proving something, about showing their own people what they could endure, about demonstrating that humans could be hurt, could be broken, could be pushed past every reasonable limit, and still hold together. That was the weapon, not the silence itself. The unbreakable will behind it. I'm old now. Too old for this work. Too old for wars. Too old for understanding things that should have been obvious from the beginning. But I understand now. Humans didn't just fight us with weapons and tactics and technology. They fought us with themselves, with their capacity to endure, with their refusal to quit even when quitting was rational, with their ability to turn suffering into strength. We never had a chance. We just didn't know it until one human sat in silence and showed us what we were really fighting. I still click my claws sometimes. 163 times tonight. New record. But it doesn't bother me anymore. It's just noise now. Just something I do while I wait for the war to end. While I wait to see if her silence really did save lives. While I wait to know if any of this meant anything. She'd say I should ask that question in 10 years. But I don't think I have 10 years left. So I'll just keep clicking and wondering and remembering the human who beat us without saying a word. The war ended on a Thursday. Same day of the week she'd arrived. Different year. Different universe. Not with surrender. Not with treaty signing. Not with dramatic final battles or last stands or any of the theatrical bullshit we tell ourselves wars are supposed to end with. It ended with exhaustion. With both sides too broken to continue. Too depleted to push. Too damaged to care anymore about whatever we'd been fighting for in the first place. I got the notification on my personal slate. Standard diplomatic language. Cessation of hostilities. Prisoner exchanges. Territorial agreements. Reparation schedules. The usual post-war paperwork. I was sitting on my coastal deck when I read it. Watching the tide come in. Holding my Kefa thermos, even though it was empty because holding things helped. Gave my claws something to do besides click. The war was over. We lost. Not catastrophically. Not completely. Just enough. Just enough territory ceded. Just enough reparations owed. Just enough concessions made that everyone knew who'd won and who'd lost, even if the diplomatic language pretended otherwise. I clicked my claws against the thermos. 207 times. Didn't bother counting until I was already halfway through. The first ship came 3 weeks later. Human ship. Diplomatic vessel. Arrived at the primary orbital station with appropriate clearances and protocols and all the careful performance of civilization resuming after mutual barbarism. I wasn't supposed to know about it. Wasn't supposed to have access to arrival manifests anymore. Wasn't supposed to be monitoring station traffic. Wasn't supposed to give a shit about what humans did now that the killing had stopped. But habits die harder than empires. I pulled the manifest data. Scanned the passenger list. Her name was there. Just her name. No rank. No title. No designation. Just Rainik Haas, cultural liaison. Cultural liaison. That's what they were calling it now. Fancy words for the human we'd tried to break and couldn't. I stared at the name for 6 hours. Clicked my claws 412 times. Didn't message her. Didn't reach out. Didn't do anything except stare and click and wonder why she'd come back. She found me anyway. Showed up at my coastal dwelling on a Tuesday morning. No warning. No announcement. Just knocked on my door like we were neighbors who'd run out of sugar. I opened the door. She stood there in civilian clothes. Simple. Functional. Nothing like the gray uniform or the tactical gear or the conditioning suite restraints. Just a person. Torvash, she said. Reina, I said. Using her name felt strange. Dangerous. Like I was acknowledging she'd been human all along instead of just an intelligence asset I'd failed to crack. Can I come in? I stepped aside. She entered. Looked around. Took in the sparse furniture, the empty Kefa containers, the data slates stacked in irregular piles, the view of the ocean through the window. Nice place. It's quiet. I imagine you need quiet after everything. I clicked my claws. 37 times. Fast EHYTHM. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Still doing that, she said. Still breathing too. Hard habits to break. She smiled. Not the small smile from the conditioning suite, or the meeting room. A real smile. The kind people make when they're genuinely amused instead of strategically positioned. You said you'd ask me in 10 years, I said. Whether it was worth it. Whether the silence saved more lives than it cost. It's only been 4 years. You're early. I know. So why are you here? She walked to the window, looked out at the ocean. Because I have the answer already. And I thought you deserved to hear it. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't click. Just waited. It wasn't worth it, she said. The words hit like conditioning nodes. Sharp. Precise. Exactly calibrated to cause maximum damage. What? The silence protocol. The seeding strategy. The entire operation. She turned to face me. It wasn't worth it. But you won. You compromised our intelligence apparatus. You destabilized our command structure. You created the conditions for strategic collapse. We lost because of what you did. I know. Then, how wasn't it worth it? She sat down. Uninvited. Comfortable. Like we were colleagues instead of enemies, trying to pretend we weren't. Because I did the math, she said. After the war ended. After we compiled casualty reports and strategic assessments and all the post-war analysis that everyone does when they're trying to understand what the hell just happened. She pulled out a data slate. Human design. Incompatible with our systems. She didn't offer to show me. Just held it. The silence protocol worked. Worked exactly as designed. You stopped trusting interrogation intelligence. Your command structure paralyzed. Your strategic cohesion fractured. All according to plan. So you won. We won 2 years faster than we would have otherwise. 2 years. Maybe 3 if I'm being generous with the projections. She set the slate down. You know what happens in 2 years of war? 53,000 soldiers die. Civilian casualties in contested zones exceed 200,000. Economic damage reaches catastrophic sustainability thresholds. Refugee populations destabilize bordering systems. I click my claws. 61 times. You're saying you saved those lives by ending the war faster. No, I'm saying I traded those lives for different lives. The soldiers we sacrificed for the seeding operation, 247 assets, all experienced, all valuable. They would have been fighting on the front lines if we hadn't sent them to your prisons. They would have been conducting operations, training recruits, providing strategic value. They provided strategic value by staying silent. They provided negative strategic value. Because the math doesn't work. 247 soldiers fighting for 2 years equals approximately 1,600 combat operations. Those operations would have directly saved somewhere between 4,000 and 7,000 Allied lives based on historical effectiveness ratios. The numbers sat between us like corpses. But you didn't know that going in, I said. You made the best strategic decision you could with the information you had. I made the decision I was ordered to make. There's a difference. She stood, paced. Physical agitation I'd never seen from her before. They told us it would work. They told us the psychological warfare value would outweigh the direct combat value. They told us we'd be heroes who won the war without firing shots. You were. We weren't. We were just soldiers who got tortured for nothing while our friends died on battlefields we should have been fighting on. She stopped pacing. Faced me. You want to know what the real damage was? Not to you. To us. 53 soldiers from the seeding operation committed suicide after the war ended. 53. They couldn't process the guilt. Couldn't reconcile the pain they'd endured with the knowledge that they'd sat in cells while their units died. Couldn't forgive themselves for following orders that turned out to be strategic theater instead of strategic necessity. I had no words, no analysis, no clicking, just silence. Her silence. Finally mine. I'm sorry, I said. Inadequate. Insufficient. But true. Don't be. You were just doing your job. Same as I was doing mine. Same as everyone in this stupid war was doing their jobs and following their orders and pretending any of it mattered. It mattered. Did it? She picked up her slate. Didn't look at it. Just held it like I held my thermos. Object displacement. Coping mechanism. Tell me what it mattered for. Tell me what we accomplished. Tell me why any of this was worth the cost. I can't. Neither can I. And I've been trying for 4 years. We sat in silence for a while. Real silence. Comfortable silence. The kind that happens when two people have run out of things to say, but aren't ready to stop being near each other yet. The ocean made noise through the window. Waves. Tide. Natural rhythms that didn't care about wars or strategies or silence protocols. Why did you really come here? I asked finally. Because you're the only person who understands. Understands what? What it cost. What it really cost. Not the strategic analysis or the casualty reports or the post-war assessments. She looked at me. Direct. Honest. You watched me scream for 6 hours. You counted my suffering. You tried to stop it. You failed. And you had to live with that failure while everyone around you pretended it was justified. It was war. War doesn't justify everything. It just makes us pretend it does. She was right. I'd spent 43 years telling myself that everything I did was necessary. That intelligence work required moral flexibility. That the suffering I documented was serving some higher strategic purpose. But sitting there in my coastal dwelling with an empty thermos and for 100 data slates of post-war analysis, I couldn't convince myself anymore. Maybe I never really believed it. Maybe I'd just been clicking my claws and hoping the rhythm would drown out the doubt. I have something for you, Raina said. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small box, set on the table between us. What is it? Open it. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. The same photograph I'd shown her during that second interrogation cycle. Her and another human. Younger versions. Smiling. Your sibling, I said. Guessing. The one from a photograph. My sister. Her name was Maya. She touched the edge of the photo. Careful. Reverent. She died 4 months into my detention. Frontline engagement. Caught in an artillery strike that our command didn't anticipate because your intelligence assessments said the sector was minimally defended. My claws froze mid-click. Your intelligence assessments were based on interrogations of human prisoners who were feeding you deliberate misinformation to protect operational security. Which means my sister died because we were too good at lying to you. Because we built such an effective deception apparatus that even accurate defensive intelligence got discarded as potential disinformation. Don't apologize. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because you asked me if it was worth it. And I want you to understand the actual price. Not abstract casualty numbers. Not strategic assessments. My sister, her name was Maya. She liked terrible music and good food, and she laughed at jokes that weren't funny because she thought being kind mattered more than being right. And she died because I was sitting in your prison doing my job while she was doing hers. She picked up the photograph, held it against her chest. Same gesture she'd made during the interrogation. Different meaning now. Then it was protective, defiant, a refusal to let me weaponize her vulnerability. Now it was just grief. I came here because you're the only person who saw me suffer and gave a shit, she said. Because everyone else in this war treated suffering like a tool or a strategy or a necessary cost of operations. But you tried to stop it, and I needed to tell you that mattered. Even though you failed, even though it didn't change anything. It mattered. We talked for hours. Not about strategy. Not about the war. Not about silence protocols or intelligence frameworks or any of the professional distance we'd built to survive what we'd done to each other. Just talked. She told me about Maya. About growing up on a colony world. About joining the military because it was the only way to afford education. About the day she volunteered for the seeding operation because they told her she'd be a hero. I told her about my broodmate. About 43 years of intelligence work. About the day I realized I'd spent my entire adult life documenting suffering and calling it service. About retirement plans that involved never thinking about any of this again. Neither of us had gotten what we wanted. Neither of us were heroes. Just survivors trying to figure out what surviving meant when the war was over and the silence was gone and all that remained was the cost. She stayed for 3 days. Didn't ask. Just stayed. Slept on my spare pallet. Made terrible human coffee that somehow tasted better than keffa. Sat on the deck watching the ocean with me while we both clicked, her fingers, my claws, in competing rhythms that almost synchronized sometimes. On the third evening, she said, I have to go. I know. I'm working with the Reconciliation Committee, cultural liaison, helping both sides understand each other now that we're not trying to kill each other anymore. Is it working? Some days. Other days, people tell me to go fuck myself because I'm the human who broke their intelligence apparatus, and they lost family members because command made bad decisions based on uncertainty I created. That's not your fault, isn't it? We made our own decisions. You just gave us information we didn't know how to process. That's on us. She smiled. Sad smile. The kind that acknowledges comfort without quite believing it. You're a good person, Torvash. I'm really not. You are. You just don't know it yet. She gathered her things, moved toward the door, stopped. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you watch the footage 7 times? The conditioning footage. You said you watched it 7 times. Why? I clicked my claws. 143 times. Lost count. Started over. Because I kept thinking I'd see the moment you broke. The moment the pain became too much, and you started to crack. The moment your strategy failed, and you became just another prisoner screaming for mercy. And did you see it? No, because it didn't happen. Because I was looking for the wrong thing. I met her eyes. You weren't trying not to break. You were trying to prove something. To yourself. To your people. To us. You were proving that humans could endure anything we did and still hold together. That's what I saw on the 7th viewing. Not resistance. Not strategy. Just proof. Proof of what? That you were stronger than we were. Not physically. Not technologically. Just stronger where it mattered. In the part of yourselves that decides whether to quit or keep going when everything hurts and nothing makes sense and there's no rational reason to continue. She stood there for a long moment. Then, she crossed the room. Did something I didn't expect. She hugged me. Umanzuk. I'd read about it. Seen in battlefield footage. Never experienced it. It felt strange. Vulnerable. Like she was trusting me not to hurt her, even though I'd documented her hurting for hours and done nothing to stop it. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing. For understanding. For giving enough of a shit to watch 7 times when you could have just written a report and moved on. She let go. Step back. I'll see you around, Torvash. Will you? Yeah. We're both on the Reconciliation Committee now. They assigned you last week. Didn't you get the notification? I checked my slate. Buried under 17 other notifications I'd been ignoring. Assignment. Post-war Reconciliation Committee. Cultural advisory role. Report to Central Complex within 10 cycles. I didn't agree to this. Neither did I. They don't really ask. They just tell you you're helping, and then you're helping whether you want to or not. I'm not qualified for cultural advisory work. Neither am I. That's probably why they picked us. She opened the door. Paused. See you next week. Yeah. See you. She left. I sat on the deck for another hour. Clicked my claws. 467 times. New record. But it felt different now. Less anxious. Less desperate. Less like I was trying to drown out thoughts I couldn't face. More like rhythm. Like music. Like something that was just part of me instead of something wrong with me. Maybe that was healing. Maybe it wasn't. But it was something. I reported to the Reconciliation Committee the following week. Turned out to be exactly as bureaucratic and frustrating as I expected. Conference rooms. Endless meetings. Diplomatic language that said nothing while taking 6 hours to say it. But Raina was there. And, surprisingly, Dorinth. And Vexel. And Malara. All of us damaged analysts who'd spent the war building frameworks to understand an enemy we'd never really understood at all. Now we were supposed to build frameworks for peace. No idea if it would work. Probably wouldn't. But we tried anyway. Because that's what you do after wars end. You try. Even when it's pointless. Even when it's painful. Even when you know you're just performing reconciliation for audiences who'd rather forget the whole thing ever happened. You try. 6 months into the work, Raina brought someone to one of the committee sessions. Another human. Older. Military bearing. 3 scars across his face that looked like plasma burns. This is Commander Tyrell, she said. He ran the seeding operation. The one that placed me and 246 other soldiers in your detention facilities. The room went silent. Everyone knew what the seeding operation was. Everyone knew what it had cost. Both sides. Tyrell stood there, uncomfortable, clearly didn't want to be there any more than we wanted him there. Why is he here? Vexel said, hostile, barely contained. Because he has something to say, Rhaenys said. And you need to hear it. Tyrell cleared his throat. I designed the silence protocol, the strategic framework, the training regimen, the psychological conditioning that prepared soldiers to endure interrogation without breaking. It was my operation, my command, my responsibility. Congratulations, Malara said, bitter. You won the war. I didn't win anything. I sacrificed 247 soldiers for a strategic advantage that the post-war analysis shows was marginally effective at best. I traded lives for uncertainty. I created operational conditions that killed more of my own people than they saved. He paused. I'm here because I owe you an apology. You owe us nothing, I said. You were fighting a war. We were fighting a war. People make strategic decisions. Sometimes they work. Sometimes they don't. That's not a moral failure. That's just war. No, it's a moral failure. He looked directly at me. Because I knew that the math didn't support the operation. I knew that direct combat value would likely exceed psychological warfare value. I knew that we were sacrificing experienced soldiers for uncertain strategic gains. And I did it anyway because my command wanted a dramatic operation that would look good in after-action reports. The silence that followed was complete. Not comfortable. Not productive. Just heavy. I lied to my soldiers, Tyrell continued. Told them they'd be heroes. Told them their sacrifice would save thousands of lives. Told them the suffering would be worth it. Elite. And 53 of them killed themselves after the war because they couldn't reconcile what I'd promised with what actually happened. Why are you telling us this? Doranth asked. Because reconciliation isn't just between governments or militaries or political systems. It's between people. Individual people who hurt each other and have to figure out how to live in the same universe afterward. He looked around the room. You all did your jobs, followed your protocols, built your frameworks. You're not responsible for what I chose to do, but you're going to spend the rest of your lives carrying the weight of what happened anyway. So I wanted you to know it wasn't your fault. It was mine, and I'm sorry. He left. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Rhaenys said, questions? Was that supposed to make us feel better? Vexel said, I don't know. Did it? No. Good. It wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to be true. The reconciliation work continued. Slowly. Painfully. With setbacks and failures and moments where everyone wanted to quit because the whole thing felt pointless. But we kept going. Built educational programs. Cultural exchange initiatives. Joint research projects. All the boring infrastructure of peace that no one celebrates because it's not dramatic enough for memorial ceremonies. Rhaena and I worked together on most of it. Not because we were assigned. Not because of strategic necessity. Just because we understood each other in ways no one else did. She'd click her fingers when she was anxious. I click my claws. Different rhythms. Same meaning. 2 years into the reconciliation work, they dedicated a memorial. Joint ceremony. Both species, honoring the dead from both sides without trying to determine who was right or wrong or justified. Just acknowledging the cost. 247 names on the human side. The seeding operation soldiers, including Maya Koss. 719 names on our side. The interrogators, analysts, and command staff who'd been casualties of the psychological warfare, including Kelthir, Rhaena, and I stood in front of the memorial after the ceremony ended, reading names. Not all of them. There were too many. But some. The ones we'd known. The ones we'd failed. The ones we'd loved and lost and couldn't save. Do you think it helped? She asked. The memorial. The ceremony. All of this. I don't know. Does it help you? Some days. Other days it just reminds me that Maya's dead and I'm not, and I don't know why that's fair. It's not fair. I know, but I keep hoping someone will explain it anyway. We stood there until the sun set, clicking our rhythms, hers and mine, almost synchronized. Not quite. Maybe that was the point. Maybe reconciliation wasn't about perfect harmony, just about finding rhythms that could coexist even when they didn't match. Maybe that was enough. 5 years after the war ended, I got a message from command. Final message. Closing out my service record. Official retirement. Pension calculations. Standard bureaucratic ending to a career that had lasted too long and accomplished too little. But at the bottom was a note. Personal, not official. From the Reconciliation Committee Director. Thank you for your service. Both during and after. I clicked my claws. 231 times. Realized halfway through that I'd been clicking in Raina's rhythm instead of mine. Realized I didn't mind. That same week, Raina announced she was leaving the committee. Going home, she said. Back to the colony world. Go to teach. Maybe right. Maybe just exist for a while without thinking about wars or strategies or any of this. That sounds good. Does it? I can't tell anymore. Everything sounds good when you describe it, and terrible when you try to actually do it. Welcome to post-war existence. She laughed. Real laugh. The kind I'd only heard a few times. The kind that meant she was actually happy instead of just performing happiness for diplomatic audiences. Come with me, she said. I stared. What? Come with me. To the colony world. You're retired. You've got nothing keeping you here. Come teach with me. Or write. Or just exist. We can click at things together and drink terrible coffee and pretend we're normal people instead of war casualties trying to pass for functional. I don't know if I can do that. Neither do I. But we could try. I thought about it. Really thought about it. My coastal dwelling. My empty thermoses. My data slates full of analyses no one would ever read. My clicking claws that had counted up to 231 and couldn't stop. Okay, I said. Okay. Okay. Let's try. Her face transformed. Not a smile. Something bigger. Something that looked like hope, but was probably just relief that she wouldn't have to do this alone. When do we leave? Next week. There's a transport. I already booked 2 tickets. You already knew I'd say yes? No, I just hoped. There's a difference. We left the following Tuesday. Same day of the week, everything important seemed to happen. The transport was small. Civilian. Nothing like the military vessels we'd both spent too much time on. We found seats near a window. Watched the planet shrink as we lifted. Watched the war become smaller and smaller until it was just a tiny blue-green sphere that could have been anything. Could have been peaceful. Could have been whole. Do you think we'll ever stop thinking about it? Raina asked. The war. All of it. The silence. The suffering. The choices that seemed necessary at the time and pointless in retrospect. I clicked my claws. 67 times. No, I said. I don't think we ever stop thinking about it. That's depressing. Maybe. Or maybe that's how we honor it. By not forgetting. By carrying the weight, even when it's uncomfortable. By letting it change us instead of pretending we're the same people we were before. She nodded, clicked her fingers. 43 times. I can live with that, she said. So can I. The colony world was beautiful. Green. Open. Full of people who'd never been to war and didn't understand what it cost to leave one. We got a small place. 2 sleeping quarters. Shared common space. Close enough to the teaching campus that we could walk, but far enough that we weren't constantly surrounded by students. We taught history, comparative cultures, post-war reconciliation frameworks. Mostly we just told stories about what we'd seen, what we'd done, what we'd learned, about a war that ended because both sides were too exhausted to continue, about a silence that destroyed an intelligence apparatus by doing nothing, about the cost of victory and the price of survival, and the way wars never really end even after the fighting stops. The students listened. Some understood. Some didn't. That was okay. Understanding took time. We had time now. 10 years after the war ended, I got a message from the Memorial Committee. They wanted to do an interview. Document the personal experiences of war participants for historical preservation. I agreed. They sent someone. Young. Earnest. Recording equipment. Tell me about the silence protocol. They said, tell me what it was like to be there when it started. And I told them. Everything. The clicking claws. The empty thermoses. The 7 times I watched her scream. The collapse. The casualties. The way we destroyed ourselves trying to understand something that had no solution. The meeting. The apology. The photograph. The memorial. The leaving. All of it. When I finished, the interviewer sat there. Silent. Processing. Was it worth it? They asked finally. All of it. Was it worth it? I clicked my claws. 347 times. Rhythm I'd been building for a decade. Finally, perfected. Ask me that question in another 10 years, I said. After I've had time to see what we built from the rubble. After I know whether the reconciliation lasted or failed. After I understand whether any of the suffering meant anything. What do you think the answer will be? I think the answer is that worth it is the wrong question. War doesn't have to be worth it. Survival doesn't have to be worth it. They just have to be what happened. And then you have to figure out how to live with what happened. That's the only answer that matters. The interviewer nodded, thanked me, left. I sat on the porch of our colony home, watched the sun set. Raina came out, sat next to me, handed me a cup of terrible coffee. How'd the interview go? I told him the truth. Which truth? The one where we don't know if any of it mattered. The one where we're still figuring it out. The one where the answer is that there isn't an answer and we have to be okay with that. She clicked her fingers. 219 times. I like that truth, she said. So do I. We sat there until the stars came out, clicking our rhythms. Different but compatible. Evidence that silence could end. That wars could end. That people who'd hurt each other could sit together and drink terrible coffee and watch the universe turn and not need any of it to mean anything beyond exactly what it was. 2 survivors. Still clicking. Still counting. Still here. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it wasn't. But it was real. And real was all we had left.